Hello everybody and welcome to this, our third webinar about self-compassion and about our own mental health. We have a lot of you registered today for this webinar, and I'm going to start off now, and I know more of you will be joining. It's one of the most exciting we've had. We've done it deliberately today as our Valentine's gift to you nurses around the world. We're so glad to be able to do this with you, and we hope that it will help you as we move forward into 2021. We hope a year when life is going to become more normal for all of us, but still not without its stresses. So we hope this is going to be an opportunity for all of you to think about your own care. How do we look after ourselves in times that are so stressful as we've had in 2020? It's only when we look after ourselves that we can really be good at looking after each other as well. And we know how important it is to be asking each other, how are you at this moment when all of us are sometimes a little bit overwhelmed, I think. So this is a very special webinar for us. It's special because of the theme and also because of all the people we have on it. We're very lucky today to have a very special ambassador, our ambassador for Nursing Now, Emilia Clarke, the well-known actor, but known to us for being just a totally wonderful person and willing to work with us and help us and engage with nurses. And we've been so grateful to have Emilia as our ambassador. We also have a return visit from Marty Balaam, whom you will all know from the first two webinars on compassion that we had. Marty is a real expert. She's founder of the Compassion Salon, which is a wonderful innovation. I'm sure she'll tell us more about it, and certainly look it up on the web if you want to join in. We also have João Marcel Grillo, who founded the Jaya Mental Health NGO, and he'll tell you more about that. João is a mental health nurse, and he's going to talk about compassion and empathy. And he has been working with two colleagues in Nepal. We're absolutely thrilled that they're able to join us, Susmita Bhagati and Laja Dixit. And Laja in particular is an art therapist, and towards the end of this will give us a session on art therapy. So have your pens and papers ready so you can join us with that. To get us going, I am so delighted and honoured to be able to introduce to you Emilia Clarke. And Emilia's chosen a poem to read to us to start us off. And Emilia, can I ask you if you would to introduce the poem and to say a little bit about why you chose it. And Emilia, thank you so much on behalf of all the nurses for joining us and for being so willing to engage with us. Thank you.
Absolutely, it's my complete pleasure. It's such a privilege to be with everyone today. Hello, hi everyone. And it's such an important webinar. I think it's such, at this exact moment in time, it's been important throughout the entirety of lockdown, but as we approach a year, I feel like now more than ever, it's a really good moment for us to be considering this. And so I love poetry. There's a million poems that I could have chosen, but I've gone back to the classics. It's called To Hope, and it's by Keats. And hope's a really funny thing. I think that sometimes it can mess you up. Sometimes it can leave you feeling a little bit hopeless, and it can be quite a confusing state. At least I find that. But I am feeling more and more that if you do invest in hope, it helps. It helps to get you out of bed in the morning, basically. So I really am a firm advocate that we can't have too much of it. And I think Keats agrees with me. So without further ado, I will read to you To Hope by Keats. When by my solitary hearth I sit, and hateful thoughts enwrap my soul in gloom, when no fair dreams before my mind's eye flit, and the bare heath of life presents no bloom. Sweet hope, ethereal balm upon me shed, and wave thy silver pinions o'er my head. Whene'er I wander at the fall of night, where woven boughs shut out the moon's bright ray, should sad despondency my musings fright, and frown to drive fair cheerfulness away, peep with the moonbeams through the leafy roof, and keep that fiend despondence far aloof. Should disappointment, parent of despair, strive for her son to seize my careless heart, when like a cloud he sits upon the air, preparing on his spellbound prey to dart, chase him away, sweet hope, with visage bright, and fright him as the morning frightens night. Whene'er the fate of those I hold most dear tells to my fearful breast a tale of sorrow, O bright-eyed hope, my morbid fancy cheer, let me a while thy sweetest comforts borrow, thy heaven-born radiance around me shed, and wave thy silver pinions o'er my head. Should e'er unhappy love my bosom pain, from cruel parents or relentless fare, oh, let me think it is not quite in vain to sigh out sonnets to the midnight air. Sweet hope, ethereal balm upon me shed, and wave thy silver pinions o'er my head. In the long vista of the years to roll, let me not see our country's honour fade. Oh, let me see our land retain her soul, her pride, her freedom, and not freedom's shade. From thy bright eyes unusual brightness shed, beneath thy pinions canopy my head. Let me not see the patriot's high bequest, great liberty, how great in plain attire, with the base purple of a court oppressed, bowing her head and ready to expire. But let me see thee stoop from heaven on wings that fill the sky with silver glitterings. And as in sparkling majesty, a star gilds the bright summit of some gloomy cloud, brightening the half-veiled face of heaven afar. So when dark thoughts my boding spirit shroud, sweet hope, celestial influence round me shed, waving thy silver pinions o'er my head. And that's it.
Amelia, thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Sweet hope. That was just lovely. And it's amazing, isn't it, how poetry calms the soul. You can kind of feel it. It's like a magic mantle. And you've done that for us. Thank you so much, Amelia.
So welcome.
Thank you from all of us. It would be a big round of applause if we possibly could.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, I hope, like me, you've all taken a deep breath. I know I have. It was a wonderful opportunity for my mind to sort of have a quick ironing and get ready for a different space. So Marty, I'm going to ask you now to take us into this different space to talk about practicing self-compassion, why we should do it and how we can do it. So Marty, it's over to you.
Hi everyone. Just to say thank you so much, Amelia. I'm so calm now and I'm going to talk to everyone about stress, unfortunately. So I'm just going to share my screen if I can. Hopefully you can all see that. I'm sure someone will tell me if you can't. So I'm going to talk to you for 10 minutes now about practicing self-compassion and why and how it's so important. So firstly, Barbara's right, let's just take a big deep breath before we talk about stress. Right from our tummies, because we do have a tendency all to put our shoulders up and breathe from here really quickly. So let's just push out our tummies and take a big deep breath before we start. So our brains are really, really old. In fact, they're 200,000 years old. And we have an old evolutionary response to keep us safe. And especially at times like that, that's so important to think about this. So we have this system called the sympathetic nervous system, which a lot of you will have heard about when we've talked before, which is our fight and flight or sympathetic nervous system. So you'll see here, usually I have a bear, but I have a dragon in honor of Amelia and a tiger. And we have our caveman running away from the tiger to keep safe. And a number of things are happening in that caveman's head, and actually in a lot of our heads at the moment, because a lot of us feel under this prolonged pressure due to COVID and the strain that we're all under. So what happens is we have an alarm bell here in the back of our heads called the amygdala, which incidentally means almond. And our alarm bells, for most of us at this time, are on full alert. Ring, 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 ring. And our whole sympathetic nervous system is triggering in response to the stress that many of us are under. So we feel this in a number of ways. For example, I'm quite nervous speaking to you now, so I have a bit of a dry mouth. So I've got my water right here. Our hearts start racing, and we have a number of things that start happening to us. Feel free if you want to write in the chat box some of those things. I can't see the chat box now, but I know that Barbara will be able to. But we breathe quicker, we trigger a number of things that make us feel stressed and enables us also to run away. And then what happens is our parasympathetic, our braking calming system kicks in, our brake. Okay, so our full on alert, running away, and our bodies trigger a system to slow us down, to calm and digest. However, at the moment, this is me, we are under prolonged pressure. Yeah, many of us are absolutely exhausted. If you can, raise a hand or write in the chat box to say how many of you have actually had enough, because I think a lot of us really have had enough. And what happens is when we're in this constant stuck place of fight or flight, we are hypervigilant, we are waiting for the next thing to happen, we are catastrophizing, we can't focus. We often say, oh, I just went to the car and I can't remember what I went there for. My daughter the other day said to me, Mum, your keys are in the fridge. Yeah, we stop focusing, and this is because our alarm bells here are doing this, and our thinking part of our brain starts to shut down. And at the same time, because we're so wonderful to ourselves, we're also great at giving ourselves a half time. So we can be very critical. I should be managing this. I can't remember anything. I'm going crazy. I'm worrying about everything. I feel shamed. Everyone else is coping. And then after this prolonged pressure, we start to burn out. And when we start to burn out, and I do think this is happening for a lot of us, and again, feel free to write in the chat box, we experience emotional exhaustion. We've had enough. Yeah, we have a reduced capacity for creativity. We push away our connections to others. That's when we start talking about hurt people hurt, because we've had enough. Yeah, and most importantly, and most troublesome for us all, is we lose our ability to trigger our parasympathetic nervous system. So we're here, so we're no longer able to calm ourselves down. However, this is the point that we start reaching for unhealthier ways of keeping ourselves well, like drinking too much or eating too many Jaffa cakes or chocolate or etc., etc. We can reach unhealthier ways of keeping ourselves well. And the other thing that we do that I've talked many times about before, when we are stressed, we hibernate, we hunker down, and we push away the things that help us the most when we aren't struggling. You know, our friends, we can push them away, exercise, and we have a tendency just to hunker down and push people away, which is the worst possible thing we can do. Now, if we had vaccinations for stress, well, that would be marvelous, but we don't. We don't have vaccinations, so we need something else. And what we need is compassion. Compassion is a really powerful tool to help us to feel safe. So compassion is the attentiveness to the suffering of, really important, ourselves and others, with the wisdom and steps taken to relieve it. Now, that wisdom may just take us to a point of running a bubbly bath, yeah, or having a nice cup of tea. Okay. And this is really important because self-care isn't selfish. As health professionals, we have a tendency to push away the very things that will help us the most. And we also have a tendency to put everybody else before us. Yeah. We reach out and look after everyone else without looking after us. And many of you will have seen this before. We cannot help anyone else unless we help ourselves. So as Chodron says, compassion for others begins with us. And it's time to start recharging our batteries. Because for the vast majority of us, we are running on empty. We would never not charge up our mobile phones. Well, at least I wouldn't. But when it comes to our own self-care, it is essential that we really dig deep now and try and help ourselves feel better so we can move forward with hope. So self-compassion, Dr. Kirsten Neff is an educational psychologist from Texas, and she says that self-compassion has 3 really important elements. One is being kind to ourselves, self-kindness. Another is the sense of common humanity that we have, and how wonderful to see it right now across the world as we talk about our sense of sharing, the sense that we are all really had enough, that we are tired, that we are exhausted, and that we are stressed. Sharing is so important. And we've heard this said over and over again, we are all in this together. And whilst, yes, this is true, some of us are in different boats. Okay. And the third element of self-compassion is mindfulness. Now, mindfulness is about resting in the present with no judgment. Okay. And the benefits are, the benefits of compassion are just amazing. We become happier, calmer, and stronger. We refill our batteries so we can cope with what's going on with us at the world at the moment. So how do we get from me there, stressed, to Julie Andrews and The Sound of Music? Well, what we do is we start thinking about how can we help ourselves feel better through compassion. Again, the evidence, just want to give you more evidence because compassion is so important. As I said before, it allows us to trigger that brake system. It's important for us in work. It promotes belonging, which is so important. It leads to improved productivity at work, better health, yeah, more meaningful relationships, promotes social connections. Again and again, I say compassion is a no-brainer. Yeah? So there are 7 steps to practicing self-compassion. Being mindful, sitting in the moment. When we are stressed like this, we have a tendency to live in our heads. We ruminate and we catastrophize. So we go down this tunnel, yeah? Lower and lower, we feel worse and worse. It's really important to be present, even when it's just eating, walking. Be present. Be kind to yourself, I will repeat over and over and over again. You are with yourself a long time. Give yourself a break. Be kind. Acknowledge that we are in this together, and that's what we're talking about today. But also be wise. So when I talk about compassionate boundaries, what I mean is if you put your feet firmly into somebody else's shoes, that can make you sometimes unable to help. Sometimes we need to step back with compassion and love and support, but sometimes it isn't wise to jump in someone else's shoes because we can become paralyzed. Say thank you for whatever you have. Express gratitude for the day, for the snow, although it's gone here. Yeah. Employ a growth mindset. We often see that picture of a cracked pavement with a bloom coming up or a flower fighting its way through. We're going to see start in the UK, the start of spring. Yeah, we can see some, spring bulbs coming up through the snow. I'm so grateful for that. We need to look at these challenges, and we often grow from them. Even though we can't feel it now, we often become stronger. And fill up your senses. I had this morning because I was listening to the radio, and John Denver, who was on, who I admit, ashamedly, to being one of my favourite artists. And he sings a song called Annie's Song, which I'm sure many of you know, called Fill Up Your Senses. And this made me think of those times. He talks about mountains and calm blue oceans and all sorts of things. But think about the things that make you fill up your senses. Poetry, as Amelia's talking about, music, singing, yeah, nature. Fill up your senses, fill up your battery. So some of the hints and tips, and these have been the same from the very beginning of COVID all the way through, and they do change slightly, but these are some of the things that help me. Put away the mobile phone for a while. Yeah, cut down on the news. It is sensationalist. It can make you feel completely rubbish. Slow right down with purpose and appreciate the small things, because they're often the things that give you most hope. It's that spiritual sense within us, our soul food. What are the things you love? And they're often tiny, small things. Remember them, list them, write some of them here for us now, and use them when you're running an empty. Pull on those. I love opera. I love Elvis movies. I'm sorry, I do. Yeah, I also like Marvel movies. Immerse yourself in the stuff that you love. And if you don't need to do something, please don't do it. Ask yourself, what is the kindest thing I could do for myself right now? And do it if you can. Don't do what ifs. That's really unhelpful. What if this happens? What if that happens? And speak kindly to yourself. I'm repeating that again from the last one. We have a tendency to be a bit mean to ourselves. If you think about how you talk to yourself and think, if I spoke to my best friend or my friends like this, would they still be my friends? Let's give ourselves all a bit of a break. And this slide now coming towards the end is so important to me, because I feel at the moment that because we're hibernating, hunkering down within our bubbles or whatever's happening in our own communities, we're starting to push people away. There's a sense that we could start being less kind while we hunker down and look after ourselves. Belonging is the one most important thing we have as a human race. We can still be close to people and be safe. We can relate safely, and this is really, really important. So thank you, everybody. I'm looking so much to the rest of the morning. Be gentle with yourself. Again, be kind to yourself. We can find hope, kindness, and joy everywhere. Thanks, everybody.
Marty, thank you so much. That was absolutely full of great hints and ideas of what we should be doing, and the way we should be looking after, caring about ourselves. And when I was looking at your hints, I was reminded of when I did some training a few years ago in mindfulness and stress reduction, and how those two things work together. And I remember the tutor saying to the class, trust the practice, trust in the practice. So, you think they're sort of little things all the time, but trust in that practice, in practicing, looking for the small things, in mindfulness, in kindness, because together they build up, don't they?
Yes.
To help us,
Absolutely.
I think. Yeah.
I always think a good way, just really quickly, to think about mindfulness and when we're worrying and ruminating is there's lots of different ways to think about it, but you think of yourself sitting at a bus stop and the worry bus is going past. So it might be the COVID worry bus or the family worry bus or the work worry bus. And what we have to gently enable ourselves to do is sit on the bench and let the worry bus go past.
Yes.
And not jump on, because once we're on that bus, it's tricky to get back off again. So let's sit and watch them go by. Clouds, boats, whatever, it helps to visualize. I think that's a good way just to let it go.
That's a really good way of thinking about it, Marty. Thank you so much. And we've got lots of comments in the chat. I just want to urge you, if you do have, somebody's put thank you, letting those buses go by, Marion Lynch. Very true. If you have questions for anybody on the panel, just general questions, ideas, please put them in the chat or the Q&A box, and we'll have time at the end, I think, to answer some of them. So now, João, I want to introduce you, and please tell us some more about Giant Mental Health and some more about compassion and empathy.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Super. Well, thank you very much, Barbara. Thank you. It's absolutely wonderful to be here. An absolute privilege to be able to tell you a little bit about Giant Mental Health and the work that we do. Really enjoyed listening to you, Marty. And I don't want to sound repetitive, but the first thing that I wanted to say is what compassion means to me, and it's very much along the lines of what you said. It's about being mindful of our own needs, being kind to ourselves, and I think it's also about having empathy for others, for their lives, for their predicaments. Because when we are kind to ourselves, we are probably much more able to be in tune with other people and to relate to what happens to other people. And I also like to think that sometimes in life, we have opportunities to transform compassion into action and something that generates positive change in our lives and in the lives of others. And so Giant Mental Health, which was founded in 2014, was born out of a sense of compassion, of solidarity and empathy. It is an organization run by nurses, not exclusively, but primarily by nurses, for nurses. And I like to think that Giant Mental Health is an example of what nurses and health professionals can do for themselves in the face of adversity. During my career as a mental health nurse, I had the opportunity to work and volunteer in South Asia, specifically in Nepal, in Sri Lanka, and in India. And these were incredible experiences. And there's probably kind of 3 or 4 things that really stood out and impacted my professional life whilst I was living and working in that part of the world. Firstly, I was incredibly shocked with the stigma surrounding mental health in South Asia. And I think that's common in a lot of low-middle income countries and actually all over the world. The stigma around mental health is still huge. And I was particularly impressed with how women are particularly vulnerable in South Asia around mental illness. The other thing that really stood out was how very few trained mental health professionals there were in South Asia, and how very little support there was for them whilst being the only ones practicing around mental health. I was also really impressed with the resilience of this small group of health professionals, and how did they found that kind of self-compassion, and how did they found the energy to do the work under such difficult circumstances. And last but not least, I became very aware of how privileged I was of having been able to train in the UK and have access to so many different professional opportunities, learning experiences, which were not available to my colleagues in South Asia. And these really were a lot of the reasons that made me and other colleagues both in the UK and in South Asia want to found and create Giant Mental Health. So Giant Mental Health, Giant means victory in various different South Asian languages. And basically our organization is dedicated to improving the mental health of people in South Asia. And we do that by following 2 things. There's 2 different approaches. On one hand, we support the delivery of mental health care services to people, especially to people who are living in remote parts of the subcontinent. And the other thing is that with the support of volunteers, mostly health professionals from the UK and many other parts of the world, we train nurses, health assistants, female community health volunteers, and many other health professionals in mental health care skills. And we also support them with their own mental well-being, with the aim of kind of having a much better equipped, well-informed mental health care workforce in that region. Our main goal really is to create a platform of mutual learning where everybody is at an equal stand, and what we really want to avoid is kind of any sort of neo-colonial modules of international development where kind of the West knows best and the West has the answer to everything that happens in regions like South Asia. What we really wanted to do is to create a platform where nurses and other health professionals have an opportunity to exchange skills, exchange resources, to talk about their experiences, and to find power really and support within that network so that they can contribute themselves to the global health movement. I have a series of different slides that I wanted to share with you to show you some examples of the work that we I hope you can see slides.
Yes, can see them.
Super. And I think when we think about compassion and transforming this into action, like I said, there's so many ways that I think nurses and health professionals can be compassionate with themselves and with others. And this picture that I'm showing you is of a psychiatric ward in Kathmandu, it's in Nepal, where we first started working with nursing, training nurses. And the first thing that we noticed was how gloomy and dark the ward was. It's basically located at the basement of a big hospital, a big teaching hospital in Kathmandu. Hardly any light, very dark, very grey, very smelly, I have to say, right next to the main door, public toilets. So kind of the forgotten ward inside the hospital. And we found, a group of nurses feeling very demotivated, very forgotten, very ignored, and also working in probably one of the most neglected areas of clinical care. So the first thing that we decided to do with members of staff, so with the nurses, with the doctors, with the cleaners, with the cookers, was to actually think, how can we change the environment of this ward? In this picture, for example, you see not just the fact that everything is quite basic, but you see on the right-hand side, a patient who is chained to their beds, which might for some look very inhumane. The main reason for this to happen is actually that there isn't enough members of staff on the ward to look after patients, not enough training as well in managing violence or aggression. So this is the kind of resource that nurses had to use in order to support and manage their patients. So really lots of difficult predicament, the one that the nurses experienced on that ward. So the first thing that we thought was, how about changing the environment of the ward? So we got everyone together, everybody chose the colors, the drawings. We had a group of volunteers, local and international, that came over, and we decided to start painting the ward. And that's what we did. So the ward changed, the environment of the ward changed considerably. But what we really noticed was how the attitude and the behavior of staff changed as well. Nurses became far more proud of their workplace. They felt valued and they felt noticed by others. It was so interesting because the ward being at the basement of the hospital, completely forgotten. The word spread that it had been painted, that there was something happening there. And then all of a sudden, staff from the rest of the hospital started to visit the ward. And that was, you know, a very tiny moment of change. But I think it's incredibly important, because all of a sudden you have something that it's improving the welfare of patients and their recovery process, but it's also having an impact on staff and how they view themselves. And also it becomes almost like part of an advocacy movement for mental health itself, because all of a sudden people noticed that the mental health ward existed. So that the impact of this went far beyond what we expected. And Ladja is going to tell you more about that ward, because we also brought Ladja into that ward to work with the nurses. So I'll leave that to you, Ladja, a little bit later. I love this picture. This is one of my favorite pictures. This is a picture of nurses. I don't know the name of the one on the back, and it's Bimala on the right. We've got a service user in the middle, and we've got Dr. Pradeep, one of the consultant psychiatrists on the ward. This picture was taken soon after the ward was painted. And to me, you know, this is just kind of the perfect, how can I say, the kind of the perfect team, really, where everybody's at the same level, everybody respects each other. I don't know if you can see that Dr. Pradeep is holding the hand of the patient. I just found that it's one of my favorite pictures of all the kind of the portfolio of images that we have, and that it says so much about what's happening in that ward. A lot of the other projects that we do are very much, you know, the kind of classical training, so capacity building, as we say, of nurses. But we always try to do that, incorporating teaching methods that really encourage nurses to reflect and to think critically. And we use a lot of role play and art, because we think these are very safe strategies to develop empathy and compassion. It's a very safe way in a society which is probably not used to talk about emotions. And it's very interesting that in many South Asian languages, you don't have words even to describe certain diagnoses that in the West we use, like depression, for example. So we use a lot of teaching strategies that encourage that kind of self-criticism, that encourage empathy, self-compassion, because we really think those are fundamental tools for nurses, not just to support others, but also to have those moments where they look at themselves and look after themselves. The other projects that we have, and that I mentioned earlier, of providing direct clinical care, take place mostly in very remote parts of the continent, and especially the kind of the Himalayan range. They're very hard to get places. I just put here some pictures where all the nurses and other staff really have, you know, very prolonged journeys. And if the monsoon comes and there's landslides and we have to push cars, and then sometimes we have to walk for hours. But eventually we do get to the hill-based health posts where these clinics take place. These pictures were taken in eastern Nepal, right next to Darjeeling in India. It's about 3,000 feet high, and where there are these little health posts, and the team goes there on a monthly basis to facilitate an outreach, what we call an outreach mental health clinic. And we do three things there. On one hand, we provide direct care to patients. Everything is for free. The psychiatric consultations, we provide nursing care, provide free medication. We also do home visits. And we also train local healthcare staff, and this is probably one of the most important pieces of this work, is that it's about nurses investing and supporting local nurses and many others who are not necessarily qualified healthcare staff, but because of their role in the community, they become informal carers. So it's about training and providing, again, that space for local staff to talk about themselves, to share their worries, their concerns, and to find solutions for the challenges that they face on a daily basis. So most of the clinics, we just announced that we're coming via the local radio. We have people coming from all over the mountainous region. Some people walk 4 to 5 hours to get to the nearest health post. And we see an average of 30 to 40 people a day. We have a large number of women and girls coming to our clinics. Suicide is one of the leading causes of death among women of working age in South Asia. So we are really pleased that we see a lot of women and young girls coming to the clinics. And we are very carefully in that a lot of our staff are women themselves, because we know that that's really going to help people to open up and to talk about their problems. We use a mixture of medical and non-medical approaches to mental health care, and counselling is something that we've been really investing on because it's still unknown to so many people across the Himalayan range. And the most important thing for us is that these teams are led by nurses, by health assistants, by female community health volunteers, and like I was saying, by women. We're working in very kind of male-dominated patriarchal societies. So in addition to the actual care that we're providing, the training, the space for healthcare staff to talk about themselves, we really want these clinics and these projects as well to be an opportunity for women to take the lead, to be leaders, to know that they can be actors of change, and by doing so, hopefully to empower them as well. Our office director in Nepal is also a woman, and I'm really happy that that's the case. Part of the work that we do when we are in the mountains is community and home visits. We visit people in their own homes, and again, nurses and psychologists train and support local healthcare staff. In a way, our main objective by doing so is that not only nurses are leaders whilst doing that, but they also are helping these communities to be less dependent from what comes from the capital. We're not going to sort out the problem of training nurses in this part of the world overnight, because the gap is so huge that it's going to take years. But what we can do with nurses leading the way is that, because nurses are still, great in numbers when compared to other health professionals, is to actually support local communities to have some sort of response mechanisms to mental health and other health problems, so that they can, maintain themselves and address their problems whilst waiting to see that, more long-term change that it's needed at a kind of a more health professionals, more services level. These are just some images of some of our wonderful nurses visiting homes across the Himalayas. Visits are always accompanied by the most wonderful tea, chai, as it said, too sweet for me, but it's just a lovely, warm welcome to these homes dotted across the Himalayan range. Finally, the other thing that I wanted to briefly mention to you is, again, the capacity building of local health and social care staff. This is not just about sharing skills in mental health care, but it's also about creating advocates for those who are most vulnerable and at risk of social exclusion. And again, it's just an example how nurses can have a role in building this advocacy movement. And I have to insist again, because the majority of nurses are women, the message becomes even more impactful, because here we have nursing leaders talking about difficult subjects and not being scared of talking about difficult subjects. This picture is Rajani, one of our colleagues, talking about gender violence, for example. So this is extremely important, and we try to incorporate that kind of advocacy aspect to our training, rather than just being, you know, transferring skills. It's much more than that. These are just some images of some of our wonderful female community health volunteers and nurses that we work with in the Himalayas. They are true heroes. They are the ones who, once the specialist service goes back to Kathmandu, stays in the area and keeps on visiting people at home until we come back. So they have a fundamental role of supporting people and also of identifying others who might need to come to the clinic, and they kind of try to convince them and persuade them to come and be seen by specialist services. So our goal really is to build resilient communities through these projects, and again with nurses leading the way. And it is, you know, I feel that I'm being very factual when talking about you know, these projects, kind of describing the organization. But what I would really like is that, you know, we're very tiny, we're very small, is that this is an example, a small example, how we can turn adversity into something quite productive on one hand, how, again, self-compassion and empathy can be really transformed into something positive, and how we nurses have so much to share and offer to the world, how we can lead, how we can actually be those agents of change, I think, that the world desperately needs, and now more than ever. I'll just leave you the website here if you want to find out more about our projects. Laja and Susmita will tell you specifically about the work that we've been doing with nurses, our colleagues, and other health professionals throughout this very difficult year that just came to an end. And as the pandemic continues, they will tell you much more about that particular component of our work. So thank you very much. Huge privilege to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joao. That was absolutely fascinating. I particularly love the transformation of the ward. Isn't that interesting, how much that can affect the way people see themselves and think about themselves, and their performance? You know, it's a real lesson, isn't it? Joao, how do you get funding? You're an NGO, a non-profit? And do you apply for funding from various donors and so on?
We apply for funding. Funding is always a big issue, as you can imagine. We're a small organisation. I have to say that the Burdett Trust has been absolutely amazing in supporting projects. We are always looking for new donors, pledged donors. We have recently applied for a big grant provided by THET, the Tropical Health Education Trust, where we're trying to build a relationship with an NHS trust in the UK and have some of their volunteers, some of their healthcare staff to come on placements to South Asia to do some training around in a paediatrics hospital. And again, that's very much what we want to do, you know, Barbara, is yes, we need the funds, but I think the most important thing for us are the human resources of the people. We've started with nothing. We didn't have a single penny, and we started a project which was very much about some of us going to South Asia and vice versa. I mean, we really wanted to have movements in all sorts of directions of people coming together, not just again from the West to South Asia, but vice versa, and also from other parts of the world. I mean, I'm really excited just to see in the chat, you know, the chat box coming people from all sorts of places. And I'm thinking, you know, I'm talking about South Asia. We really want to hear about effort to reach out to everyone, and that's kind of the utopia. The dream is that, you know, we can create this massive platform involving nurses from all over the world. And you know, I'm very passionate about mental health. So because mental health is kind of, it's been the ugly duck, it's been the kind of the forgotten one, I think, a little bit in clinical care. So I'm really interested to bringing everyone together so that we can generate some positive change. And everyone, all of us, have access to the same level of support, the same level of professional development opportunities, the same materials. I think that's our starting point, and that's where we would like to move forward to.
That's fantastic, and I'm so glad that I'm so glad we found you at Nursing Now, because we do have this global reach and global networks. So I hope this may be the start of yet another phase.
Yes.
Clearly, Jaya, I think, shows us what hope can do. You started small and you've created huge impact and built on your own hope for something better, which is really inspiring. So thank you so much, Shawal. We're now going to go to Nepal. Susmita, I can see you, and you're going to talk to us about mental health nursing in a time of COVID, I think. Welcome. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you so much. So am I audible? Okay. Thank you so much. Namaste, everyone, from the land of Himalayas, from the land of culture, values, and the boon that has given by us, by the nature to us. Yes, Nepal is a very small country, and I think most of us do not know about Nepal yet, because it's a very small country in the map of the whole world. Like many of the people think that it's a part of India or it's part of China. We are a very independent and a secular country, and talking about today's self-compassion, about love, empathy, I think we Nepalese are full of it. We love to love each other, and we love to be with each other. So today also I have many friends from Nepal who are very interested to be in this program, and they are just showing so much interest. I think that's what compassion is about. That's what empathy, that's what love is all about. And in nursing, during the time of COVID also, first of all, introducing myself. Of course, you know my name. I'm a registered nurse of Nepal, a mental health nurse, I would say, of Nepal. And according to my qualification, I am bachelor's in nursing and master's in counseling psychology. So I'm working as a mental health nurse in Nepal, in Jaya Mental Health also, and working as a part-time counselor in different part of the different organizations that work on mental health. So representing Nepal and Nepalese nurses all over the world, or I say a nurse, a mental health nurse all over the world, is kind of a surreal experience for me, because we don't have much platform to speak about ourselves. Like nurse is we say it's a sidekick of a medical profession, we say, because nursing is all about caring, it's about empathy feeling, but we don't have so much to tell about. We do have, but we don't get that much opportunity to speak about. But due to this COVID-19 effect that has affected the whole world, and Nepal is no far from it, we have been affected economically, emotionally. I would say we have been affected in every part of our life. Yes, there were some good points that we would like. We got the chance to be with our family and all, but there are many problems that has caused by the COVID-19, and the effect has been till now. Also, it's been almost a year that we have been affected by it, but it's still there. So working as a mental health nurse, and for this conference only, I've been talking with my different nursing friends who have worked in clinical area. When I asked them about what do you want to share to the whole world, if you had the chance, what would you say? Then the thing that they said that is, we just want to be heard. We just want to be viewed. We just want to be known by the whole world that we are working hard. Yes, wearing that PPE for almost 8 to 12 hours, and some working for continuously for 8 to 10 days. Like, they are my friends who have been working for whole 8 nights in COVID ward, and they have been positive when they came out, and they have been isolated from their family, from their from then from then it's kind of emotionally attached from being audible, or I think I'm a bit disconnected, or
No, you're still connected. You were just breaking up a little bit. So maybe those of us with videos on could turn them off just while we're not speaking.
Okay,
but you're back, Susmita.
Okay, thank you. So talking about, I think I have more to say about, because nursing, I think, like, I have got some chatter who say that respect to all the healthcare workers by Anusha. Thank you so much. A small word respect means a lot, because we work for the people, and we are always expected that we are in good health and we are caring for the family. And I think if a small word of thank you and a small word of sympathy, small word of respect means a lot to us. And in this situation about talking about mental health, it's still a taboo in the whole world, and especially in Nepal, we don't talk much about mental health. Whenever we try to talk about mental health, there people think that he's mad, or he has gone mad, or he's crazy. If we take any medicines, then there are still the situation where people are taken in a bad way, or they are taken in a very negative way. So working in a mental health field in the country like Nepal, or as in our previous presentation there was, that um, in South Asia, mainly mental health is not taken seriously. It is taken as a taboo, it's taken as a stigma to talk about it, to work on it. Even when I'm working as a mental health nurse, people say that you can just go to USA, Australia, wherever you want to go, and you can just earn dollars, and why are you just wasting your time here working in mental health field? But the situation is different, because when your mind is healthy, your body, your society, your family, your heart, your health, everything is healthy, and I believe in that. So I think the men working as a mental health nurse in Nepal and representing a Nepalese nurses and nurses of the whole world is kind of a blessing to me, and I'm very proud to be a nurse. And this COVID-19 has affected us very badly, economically, emotionally, mainly I would say emotionally more. We are affected, and but they are the people, I think nurses, health workers, all the frontline people are the ones who work for others more than themselves. So, being a nurse and being a normal people, being a Nepali, I would like to show my gratitude, show my respect to all the frontline workers who have been working here. And today in our this conference also, we have so many people who have been working for other people, for others health, and others I would say for the life. They are saving a life. You are a warrior, I would say. And I would like to show our respect to us, and we Nepalese, and from Nepal, from all my friends, all my relatives, and from Jaya Mental Health also, we would like to show our gratitude and respect to everyone who has been here, and especially to Miss Emilia Clark, who has been with here, showing such a gratitude to the health workers. And thank you so much to Nursing Now for giving this platform to speak. I think I had so much to talk about. I had a diary written about it, but I'm so nervous that I'm just speaking my heart out. I just want to express thank you so much for giving this opportunity, and every people being here, and the one who will be watching this recorded video later. Um, if you have ever thanked a health worker, or any person who have been working in this difficult situation for self and for others and for you, then if you have shown some respect, some love, then I would say we have a respect of saying namaste in Nepali culture. I would say thank you so much for that, and thank you so much to everyone for being here. And I think I'm just excited to be here. And finally, stay safe, stay calm, keep loving, and be healthy. And let's be kind. Thank you.
Thank you, Susmita. Thank you so much. Your enthusiasm is inspiring to all of us. And there's lots of comments in the chat box saying thank you and that you're doing so well. You know how brilliant you are, and what a great example of a registered mental nurse, which I would certainly agree with, Susmita. You're certainly thrilled us this morning. So thank you so very much. And thank you for showing us all so much love. It's so much appreciated. And so, Laja, I want to move on to ask you to talk to us about art therapy. We're so excited. So everybody who's tuning in, grab your art materials right now, because you may have a chance to use them. And I just want to remind you, if you have questions, please put them in the chat or in the, yes, somebody's written, that was wonderful, Susmita, you've given me a huge smile. How nice is that? One person can say that to you every day. That would be really fabulous. Yes, thanks for reminding us that we're all in this together. So thank you so much, Susmita. Yes, so you'll be able to watch this later. Don't forget to send us your questions or comments. And I hope we're going on till 1:30, so we may have time for a question or two. But now we're going to move over to Laja. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. Namaste to everybody present here. So I am an art therapist, and being a great believer of visuals, I'm going to start off with some photos and some slides, and then I will take it on from there. So just bear with me while I share my screen with you. So here we go. I hope you can see it. So we say we're from Nepal, but where exactly is Nepal? That is the question. So I'm just going to take it from there. Just a minute. Bear with me. Okay, sorry, some technical difficulties right here. Oops. Just a minute. Okay, we're just going to start off with the work that I've been doing in the psychiatric ward at NMC that Joao talked about. I don't know if you noticed the little room that Joao had a photo of what looked like a storeroom. That was converted into a comfort room where we worked with the inpatients of the ward. Unfortunately, we cannot show you photos of the patients, so you can just see my photo of working with the patients. The point of this comfort room was to provide a safe space for the patients to come into, where they could just relax if they wanted to spend some time in a room by themselves under the supervision of nurses. They were allowed to do that. You've already seen the condition of the wards at NMC. It is not the best place to be at, especially if you're sharing so much space with so many people. So this comfort room was more like an oasis in the desert, where they could just come in and do some work. This is again another image of working with the patients. While we work with the patients, we understand that working with the nurses, giving them support is as important, because we realize, as Joao pointed out earlier, that nurses are the ones who spend the most time in the ward. They are the ones who are dealing with the patients, which means they have to be alert at all times. They have to put aside their personal agendas, no matter what's going on in their personal lives, and deal with every patient who is there. You have seen the condition of some of the patients. Some of them can be very aggressive, so they have to be extra careful. So providing support for the nurses happened through therapeutic sessions in the comfort room. And as you can see from the pictures, we do have a very small space in the room, but we make the most of it. Now, this is before the pandemic, mind you. I'm starting from what happened before the pandemic, and then I will move on to how we dealt with support after the pandemic hit us. So these are again some more images of how we've been supporting the nurses. Again, the ward does not comprise of just the doctors, the patient, and the nurses. We also have the cleaning staff. We also have people who help in the kitchen, who cook the food. So it is important for us to, again, provide support for them as well. So again, the comfort room is open to anybody who wants to come in. If they want to sit down for a session, we are open to it. If they just want to come and chit chat, basically the point is to just come in and vent what you want to talk about. So that is exactly what we do in the comfort room. Again, you already saw a picture of Dr. Pradeep, who's the head of psychiatric department. My job, again, is not just working with the patients or just providing support for the staff in the ward, but to also convey whatever I've seen with my work with the patients, the development I see, or the downsides that I see happening. We discuss it with Dr. Pradeep, the head nurse, and then we deal with it accordingly. So my job is, again, it's all about teamwork. It's all about effort. It's about bringing everybody together so that the patient gets the benefit of it all. Once pandemic hit, the main question was, what are we going to do about it? In March 2020, when Nepal went into lockdown because of the pandemic, we were quite taken aback by it. It was difficult to commute. So we sat down and we talked about a way out of all this. We wanted to continue providing our service to the nurses, but then we also realized the need for support for anybody and everybody who needed it. So we started the helpline, which was called the Emotional Support Helpline. It was open throughout the week. We had Dr. Rajani and me dealing with it. But then we also had an exclusive helpline, which was concentrated and focused only for the nurses, because we realized they are the frontline workers. We realized that in some cases, they did not have the PPE gear while they were working. So imagine the strain on them while they're dealing with patients in the hospitals, while we were in the comfort of our homes. So it was very, very essential for us to provide any kind of support that we could. Being an art therapist, yes, having a helpline did mean that I could not do any work that was related to art, but the understanding that at least we were available to listen to their problems, that they had a place where they could call and just talk about the issues that they were dealing with. Just to be a listener to somebody in need was very, very important to us. And that's exactly what we did with the helpline. Along with the helpline, again, for the nurses, we started with our Zoom programs. We provided support to nurses. Now, this session especially is for the nurses in Pokhara, which is another city in Nepal. And some of the nurses, which you can see in the screen, were in isolation. Some of them were quarantined because they had dealt with COVID patients and they had been infected. So the point of having a Zoom session was so that we could share stories. Again, it's very difficult to sit down and draw, especially when you're in such a vulnerable stage. But to be able to listen to others sharing their experiences, to be able, to just be able to sit there and have people around you, even if it's just on screen, that provided comfort for those who were in isolation. The point of these Zoom sessions was, if they were able to, then to actually have very quick drawing sessions like the one we're going to do later. But in case they did not, or they were not comfortable doing this, then they would just be there listening. And they would share their experiences if they wanted to, and I would listen to them. What's important here is that they would not share their stories to be heard. To hear somebody and to listen to somebody, there's a stark difference. When you hear somebody, that means you're ready to give advice. But if you're a listener, that just means that you are taking in all of their frustrations, not necessarily, it's not important to give them advice. Sometimes people don't need advice. They just need to be heard. So that was what we were trying to do with the Zoom sessions. Along with providing support for the nurses, We also had sessions for students and faculty of colleges. We realized that with the pandemic, students were hit very, very hard. They were very frustrated. With educational institutions being shut, they were worried about the future. The faculty running online classes was very frustrating because, as we know, technology can be very tricky. Especially in some parts of Nepal, Pokhara, as I'm talking about, we do have issues with the internet. Electricity keeps going off, which means some of the students would miss classes for a lot of days, and the frustration would just build up. So again, these Zoom sessions, the best part about Zoom sessions is instead of just talking to one person or two person a day, we were dealing with about 20 to 40 people per day, which means we were offering our services at a larger quantity, which was great because during the pandemic, the importance is to provide services to as many people as possible, to reach out to a lot of people, to let them know that there is somebody who is here to help you, to listen to you. There's not much you can do, but you can at least provide them the tools that they can use uh, in case they were frustrated, in case they were going through a sad phase, in case they didn't know what to do, in case they were anxious. So at least via therapeutic tools, I was able to provide them the support that they needed. I will continue, I will tell you some of the sessions we did, drawing sessions. For example, some of the sessions we did was about self-discovery. Like Marty pointed out earlier, it's so important to live in the present. It's so important to sometimes forget about what's going on all around you, but to be one with yourself. We forget to live in the present. We forget to consider the emotions that we're feeling because we are always dealing with things that are happening around us. We're also dealing with the emotions of people who we care about, family members who are living in the same house. That means we're depriving ourselves of care and comfort. So some of the sessions were all about discovering who you are, drawing self portraits, thinking about what are the emotions that make me me? What are my strengths? What are the strengths that I need at this moment that is going to help me through my struggles? We did not focus on the negatives, though, as you can see in one of the images here, somebody wrote some negative things about himself, though it's in Nepali, you might not be able to make out. But sometimes dealing with the negatives is also helpful. That's again another way of venting. It's probably something that they needed to do. The best part of doing these drawing sessions online is that the focus was on the image on the paper and not on themselves, which means people were not intimidated. There's a big difference when you ask somebody, how are you feeling, on their face. Sometimes they do not have an answer to that because they do not know how they're feeling. You're dealing with so many emotions at one point, you do not know how to list them out. But if you ask the same person to draw an image on paper and talk about that image, it becomes less intimidating. But then again, indirectly, they are talking about themselves, which means they're uncovering layers of feelings and emotions that they're going through. So that's one of those exercises that we did. Another, which I'm a great believer in, is working with memory. When you are sitting indoors during this pandemic, struggling, being in lockdown, what are the things that make you happy? Isn't it always about the happy memories that have happened, things that have happened in the past that make you feel good today? Things that happened in the childhood, when you were growing up, memories you had with your siblings or your family or your friends, that always brings a smile on our faces. That can be a comfort factor. Yes, there are also downfall of having negative memories. But again, like I said earlier, the focus was always on sticking to good memories, happy memories, things that made you feel great about yourselves. So we worked a lot with memory. As you can see in some of the drawings, there's a lady who remembered the time when she was dropped off to school by her mother. And that was one of her fondest memories. So we talked a lot about growing up. We talked a lot about remember what you used to think when you were growing up. Remember where you wanted to be. So that basically reminds you of the things you wanted to do in life. And that in itself brings this sort of positive energy, which is really important in this day and time, because of the pandemic, we are so engrossed in the negativity of the pandemic. We are so driven by, again, what the social media is saying about the pandemic, about what the news is saying about the pandemic, unfortunately about the deaths that are happening within our own community and families, that we forget the good things that are still going on in our lives. We still have people who care about us. We still have friends that we care about. So memories are a great way to revive those emotions, where you appreciate what you have. You are thankful for where you are. Again, as you can see in the images, one of the drawings is about, again, another person going to the market with her mother and buying a piggy bank as a kid. And for her, that was the best memory. She remembers buying her first piggy bank, and then she told me that she still had it now when she's in her 20s. And the whole point was she started appreciating that piggy bank while she was indoors at home, frustrated that nothing was going right. Just the sight of that piggy bank in front of her gave her hope, made her feel good about where she was. It's again about appreciation. It's again about being thankful for where you are, but then it's also about taking care of yourself, because that's important. You cannot take care of your family unless you take care of yourself. So that was the kind of ideas that we are going on with those drawings. Again, as much as we dwell on the past, as much as we dwell on the happy memories, it's also very, very important to think about where you want to be. Contentment is a word I use a lot in my sessions. I think it's so important to be content. It's so important to be happy and thankful and appreciative of where you are today. Yes, things could get better. Yes, we could be more successful later. Yes, we could earn more money. That's all there. But then just to be content with where you are right now, and then plan for the future that you'd want to be at. That's again a great way to start thinking positive, about having a positive mindset. So as you can see in these drawings, life goals: where would you want to be 5 years from today? What are your goals? What would you want to achieve? So this basically gives you that inspiration you need to get up and start thinking about where it is that you'd like to reach. Now, these are mostly drawings that I've done with students, but then there are also drawings that we've done with nurses. These are life stories. Again, like I said earlier, when you ask somebody to talk about themselves, it can be very intimidating. I would not know what to say if somebody asked me, "Hey, Laja, how are you feeling today?" I would probably be like, let me think about it. But then if you ask somebody to write a story about anything, it becomes less intimidating, but there are elements of their own life which, when you explore, makes it easier for them to talk about the emotions, talk about their feelings, talk about all the frustration that's going on. So that's again a very indirect way to tap into the unconscious. Like you can see in the pictures, one of them drew herself as a frog, and she shared her story by being a frog. And she did not feel intimidated sharing it to the entire group or talking about her frustrations. As you can see in the other one, if you can just read the title, it makes all the sense, right? Because that's when she was discovering herself. She was discovering what she could do. She was discovering her potential, which she had forgotten because of the pandemic, because she was so lost in frustration. So that's another way of supporting yourself. I'm not talking about supporting everybody else, but then it's about being compassionate towards yourself. That is really, really vital at this day and age. Another one, as we all know, is priorities. What is our priority today? Isn't it to just be calm? Isn't it just to find happiness in the little things? One thing the pandemic has made us all realize is that we can survive with very little. Who would have thought that we could stay indoors for months on end and still find little happiness, little things that put a smile on our faces? So again, this is a great time, I think, to list out your priorities. Think of things that are actually really important for you, because somewhere along the line where we started pursuing our careers, where we started pursuing relationships, we might have forgotten the actual basis of our existence. What are the little things, the simpler things that give us happiness? Because remember, for the simpler things, you don't need so much. You can still be inside a room in lockdown and still find your calm. That is, again, another way of taking care of yourself. What I try to achieve with these drawings, with these sessions, with either, with nurses or students or faculty of colleges, is to help them rediscover themselves, to be kind to themselves, to look beyond everything and to help themselves so that they're able to take care of themselves. This is all about self-care and compassion towards ourselves. In Nepal, the lockdown ended months ago. So we have been again back at providing physical support. So we have started by providing support at a nursing college to students of the third year BSc nursing. It has been a surreal experience to go back to a physical space wearing a mask with people who are sitting in front of you, masks. It's very different when you cannot see the expression on the faces. It's very different where you're trying to speak through the mask and hope to be heard in a larger space. But then that's something we have started to do. We've done a few sessions of it. And it is great that we are there, because the frustration that the students have had of losing out on education, again, the optimism that they have had now that colleges are open here. But then there's also that fright that, are we sure this is a good idea? We are back in college, but are we maintaining social distance? Are we still at risk? And these are nurses who do go to hospital spaces for internship. So you can make out the kind of risks they are at and the frustration that they're dealing with. But then we go into the spaces and we help them talk about it. We help them vent out their frustrations, because again, being nurses, you are givers. You give so much that I hope and I wish that you take out time for yourselves to think about what you want, to think about what you like, to think about what is it that keeps you happy while you're trying to take care of other people, while you're trying to take care of the patients. So this is something that's really important for us at Jaya. The work that I've showed you today is, again, the work that I've been doing at Jaya Mental Health Vishwa with the team, which has been wonderful. But one thing I've realized while I've been running Zoom sessions, or while I've been providing the helpline services, is that people try to reconnect with you. You spend an hour with them and they feel the support that you're giving them, and they want that support all the time. So I got some questions about how can we reach out to you? We want that motivation every day. Now, it's not possible for us to run Zoom sessions with the same group every day. We are trying to reach out to a larger community. And therefore, the only other option that I've seen during this pandemic is to use social media as a way of supporting, as a way of providing some motivation, some tips on self-care, anything, anything that can motivate a person to take care of themselves, for them to, get out of that box that they're in and help themselves. And therefore, I started in May 2020, my Instagram account called Art Therapy Stories. I mean, it's very new. There's very limited resources there, but this is just a way for me to provide support to anybody, who needs it. So basically, in a nutshell, this is what we've been doing. And hopefully we can do something similar in a bit, Barbara, while we run the art exercise, which should be very quick.
Laja, thank you so much. Yes, we are running out of time, unfortunately. It's almost 1:30 here. Is there, Laja, an exercise you could leave with us, something you would say to us that would be good for us to do in art, I mean?
Sure. I mean, again, if you can just think, if you can just take your time and think about what animal you would be.
Okay.
If you were to think about all the animals, right? And then think about your personality and try to relate yourselves to an animal, which animal it would be. It's a great way to think about your strengths. It's also a great way to think about your weaknesses, but we're not going to touch upon the weaknesses. We will only capture the strengths that we have, because that's important during this pandemic. So if you can just think about that, it might surprise you. The things that the animal has that you think you can relate to, and then you start questioning, why did I choose this animal? Do I really have this strength? And the answer that you have for yourself might actually surprise you, but then also support you. That's one way of dealing with maybe the emotions that people are going through, maybe the kind of strength that they're looking for at this difficult time. So I would really ask you to try it.
That's a really good advice, Laja. And we'd say to everybody listening, if you want to draw the animal you'd like to be and send it to us at Nursing Now, scan it in, send it to us. Yes. We will be very happy to share it on our website and to talk about this session, which of course is recorded and will be available. In the question box, we're going to go, I think, 5 minutes over. I hope everybody's okay about that 5 to 10, because there was one burning question that, in the spirit of what we're talking about today, which is compassion for ourselves and solving problems, I thought I should ask you. So somebody's posted it in our question box, and it's about a patient of theirs who is a stroke patient who's been moved to a side ward with no windows. And this nurse is saying she's quite worried about the impact on the person's mental health because it feels like a prison. And the person has a phone, but that's all. And I just wondered if together we have some tips and hints we could suggest for helping, for the nurse to help this patient who's alone in a windowless room, having had a stroke. Marty, can I start with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just reading that question, how very, very difficult, and with no window, because it's not even as if you can stand at the window. But I'm wondering about that person's relatives and family, and I'm wondering about music can be really important, especially if the person has a phone. Of course, there's so many different things we can do with a phone to interact and see people's faces, but I wonder about, I suppose it depends on that particular individual, but music can be very, very, very powerful. Words can be very powerful. And that's the whole issue as well about safe relating. We are able to see suffering and help, but not be really close to somebody. So it's how we relate safely to someone in a closed room with no windows. That's so difficult. But I think it's about checking in. It's lots of checking in. Are you okay? What would help? What can we do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I was very struck, Larger, when you were talking about drawing memories. There were a number of people in the chat who were saying, you know, that's great. It's made me think about happy memories. And I was thinking maybe a guided, I don't know if the person could draw, having had the stroke, what the, you know, the sequelae of that. But if it was a guided drawing, so the nurse saying, tell me about a memory and I'll draw it. And, you know, what do you think?
I think it's a wonderful way. And see, the thing about memory drawing is it's not just about the drawing that the person makes, but for example, the piggy bank that I talked about, to actually have something from the memory, a physical item from a happy memory brought out and kept next to this patient will also help greatly, because that's a constant reminder of feeling good. So that's what happy memory drawings are about. You know, if you can just pull out a good happy memory and some physical item that's relatable to it and have it next to you, it's a wonderful way to have that item in front of you. It gives you the constant reminder of the time when you were very calm, you were positive, and that starts your journey of positive thinking every day. You know, you start thinking positive, you start feeling good about yourself. So maybe that's something that they could try.
Somebody's written in the chat, perhaps the nurses, actually it's Cheryl from Jamaica who's written a couple of comments. Thank you, Cheryl. But she's written, perhaps the nurses and staff can create a drawing of a window and change the images that are put there so it appears that you're looking out of the window at different things. That's very creative, isn't it?
Yeah.
Joao.
Absolutely.
Yes, Joao.
I was kind of putting my boring clinical hat on, and I was thinking that one of the things that I would do as well, in the position of the nurse that shared that concern, is to share it with her colleagues or his colleagues and ensure that there is a nursing plan that everybody is aware of in terms of the needs of that patient. So, as you know, we work most of the time on a shift basis. And often happens that, you know, one particular nurse has a concern about the patient, and when he or she leaves the hospital for the day, there's no continuity to decisions that have been made around, you know, the best interest of that patient. So I think that this is kind of the boring advice, but what I would do is kind of to formally share your concerns with the patient. It sounds like that there are risks of ignoring the impact that that environment has on the patient. There's probably limitations. I don't think that, you know, that's probably a lot of other options of where that patient can stay, but let's explore the best solution can be and share it and make decisions with the team and with the patient and family members as well. So there is that consistency, and it's not just when that particular nurse is on shift and on in the hospital, but there's kind of continuity to it.
That's very good advice, Joao. So it's a team issue as well, isn't it? And of course, the team, as you said in your presentation, also includes, or was it you, or I can't remember now, but it includes everybody who goes into that side ward, doesn't it? So the cleaners, you know, they can bring something, the people serving
Absolutely.
food, you know, everybody has something to offer.
Everybody has something to contribute.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Susmita, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I was just thinking about the scenario that what would the patient be feeling right now, because being alone and being in the situation is very hard. I think communication from a self distance with them and sharing about what's happening in the outer world, how's the weather, and how their family has to communicate with them. I think sharing these things and saying that good and bad, both things don't last for long, and it's not for long. You'll be back again in the world being normal, healthy, as a health wise, as a physical wise and mental wise. I think giving that compassion feeling, giving that empathy, and giving the hope, um, I think that would help, because if I was that patient, then I would be waiting for the good days to come, and giving the hope that good days will obviously come. Just have that patience and giving that patience to the patient. I think that would work. Working as a in a feeling wise, I think that would be helpful for them. And this can be addition along with all the ideas that we have been sharing here. And I was just imagining that how miserable that patient would be feeling right now, and talking with them and sharing about the outer world, and thinking that it will end and I'll be out again, I'll be healthy again, is that hope. I think that would be a great motivation for him or her. Thank you.
That's really interesting, Susmita. And in fact, you could have the sort of mental health bus, couldn't you, going past the window every day, and it's slightly different every day. And just as you were talking, I was thinking you could actually have a competition for everybody on the ward to see who could draw the picture for the next day, you know, have that a picture up. So Rubiana, I hope we've given you a few ideas. And thank you for bringing us that question. I really hope, I'm sure we all do, that your patient does well and comes out from their room very soon, much restored to health. So just to end, and we could go on for the whole afternoon, I think we'll try and come back another day with an art therapy session led by you, Laja. We'll see if we can get that in the diary. So to end this session, I want to thank all of you for a brilliant, brilliant afternoon that we've had together. We've had some very appreciative comments from people around the world saying how inspired they've been. And thank Amelia, she had to go, but it was wonderful to have her read the poem. And in fact, it was so inspiring that we've asked Marty to finish with another poem. Because I think it's something that's good for our soul. So with that, it's goodbye from me, and Marty, over to you.
Hi, thank you, Barbara. So this is Blessing by John O'Donoghue. On the day when the weight deadens on your shoulders and you stumble, may the clay dance to balance you. And when your eyes freeze behind the grey window and the ghost of loss gets into you, may a flock of colours, indigo, red, green, and azure blue, come to awaken in you a meadow of delight. When the canvas frays in the currach of thought and a stain of ocean blackens beneath you, may they come across the waters a path of yellow moonlight to bring you safely home. May the nourishment of the earth be yours. May the clarity of light be yours. May the fluency of the ocean be yours. May the protection of the ancestors be yours. And so, may a slow wind work these words of love around you, an invisible cloak to mind your life. Namaste, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. See you next time.